Hi everyone, it's H here from Aftermarket Arbitrage, your wholesale expert. And in this video, we're going to go through FBA wholesale versus RA/OA. Okay, and by the end of this video, you will hopefully have a bit more of an insight as to which business or which model of Amazon is right for you. Okay, so first things first, let's go through what is RA, what is OA, and what is wholesale. First of all, RA is you're going into your brick and mortar stores, going into shops, your retail shops, and purchasing stock which is usually discounted or on clearance and selling this stock on Amazon. Okay, we'll go through the positives and negatives of each of these three as we go on in the video, but first I want to break down what each of these three are. So RA, going into your shops, buying clearance offers, buying discounted stock, and then obviously utilizing these discounts to sell for a profit on Amazon. OA, very similar to RA, but instead of going into shops, we are utilizing online retail websites. For example, Boots, like using a Boots sale which you found on the Boots website, purchasing this stock from the website and then selling this discounted stock on Amazon for a profit. Okay, so those two are pretty self-explanatory. We're either going into shops, buying stock which is on sale, or buying stock which is on sale online and then selling this stock on Amazon for a profit. Okay, very, very simple. Now what's wholesale? Wholesale is we are buying from distributors, wholesalers and brands. And usually buying from these sorts of companies, we're buying stock in higher quantities, in higher volumes. We're developing long-term relationships with these companies and utilizing many factors, including those two. So utilizing our relationships, utilizing purchasing stock in volume from these companies. We are leveraging the stock which we'll be getting, leveraging the price points we'll be getting, and utilizing this stock to sell on Amazon for a profit. So wholesale, very simply, purchasing from distributors, wholesalers and brands in large volumes, developing relationships with these guys. And then after purchasing this stock from these sorts of companies, selling this stock on Amazon for a profit, thanks to the relationships we've developed with these companies, the value that we're offering to these companies, thanks to the different sorts of positions within the supply chain that these companies are at. Okay, for example, if you have a company which is high up in the supply chain, which is a distributor that purchases truckloads upon truckloads upon truckloads of stock, obviously they are going to get stock at really, really good pricing, which they'll be able to pass on to us as Amazon sellers, and we can then utilize that margin to sell on Amazon. So RA/OA is profiting off discounts. Wholesale, very simply, is profiting off relationships and different suppliers based upon their position within the supply chain, like I've just explained, and also purchasing stock in volume from them and utilizing those factors to get stock at cheaper price points and then utilize that margin we get to sell on Amazon. So what are the positives of RA/OA? Low capital and low barrier to entry. For example, you can go into Tesco, go to the clearance section, go to the clearance aisle and do RA with 50 quid because you could find 5 Olay creams discounted at 7 quid and their RRP is 20 quid. Low capital, low barrier to entry. Anyone can walk into Tesco and it's fairly low capital of 50 quid for the example I've just given. And it's very, very beginner friendly in that sense. You can go into Tesco, purchase some cream, slap it on Amazon. Literally anyone can do that. Okay, but obviously that comes with its negatives. Stock is unpredictable. Okay, like I've just said, you're going into Tesco, you go into a clearance aisle or a discounted aisle, you only have what's there. So you might have 2 of those Olay creams I've just mentioned. Okay, so great. So our profits from there and the profitable stock is unpredictable because we can only go and pick up 2 units. Okay, so those profits aren't consistent and they're not stable. Okay, so why isn't it stable? Because you won't be able to replenish these creams. So when we look at our business, our revenue is going to spike, and that's it, because we're not going to be able to replenish these profitable products. So that's why it's less stable than wholesale. And you'll get why I'm saying less stable than wholesale when we get onto that section. And it's also less scalable, because with the stock that you're acquiring when you're doing RAOA, like I've just said, it's not replenishable. Okay, most of the time you are profiting off discounts and sales. So you can't really scale a business around one-off sales, for example. Okay, so that's why it's less scalable. High saturation and price wars. Now, due to the fact of it being such low barrier to entry and there's a low capital amount required, the saturation is much higher because anyone can do it. Someone who's learned how to do Amazon yesterday can do RAOA. So there's much higher saturation on these listings and there's much more price wars. So price will tank on these listings if you don't know what you're doing. If you're sourcing stock which is so readily available for the whole country. Okay, now that also makes it less scalable because it'll be very, very difficult to scale a business if it's very, very difficult to be able to project your revenues, right? And have your business essentially going in that direction if all the stock that you're buying is going in that direction, for example. Now, with that being said, it also means it's very, very hard to run the business sustainably, okay? Whereby we are acquiring profitable stock consistently and seeing consistent, sustainable growth. Because if the stock that we are purchasing is constantly tanking, constantly getting saturated, and is so beginner friendly, the sustainability aspect to it is somewhat very, very low, right? Because for us to be able to for us to run a sustainable business, we are going to want to put certain systems in place, outsource certain tasks. For example, with RA, how can you really outsource someone going to Tesco to scan stock? You can't, which means, again, there's no sustainability there. Now, another negative of RAOA, you are investing time for short-term growth. You can go out to Tesco, you can go and look at a Boots clearance online. However, you're investing that for short-term growth because once you found that sale or that offer, or that stock, on offer, once you've made that profit, it's gone. Once you've sold that stock, it's gone because it's a finite amount of stock you're purchasing. That sale is finite, it expires. So we are investing time for short-term growth because we are spending time to find this stock, but we can never replenish this stock. So you're never going to be able to grow and scale the business. You're always going to be constantly chasing leads, chasing deals, okay, for short-term. Okay, we found an offer, bang, sent in, profit from that. Okay, let's hunt for another offer. Let's try and find another offer. So we are investing time for short-term growth. Okay, we are making quick cash. That's all we're doing. We are profiting off sales, profiting off price glitches, profiting off clearance offers or whatnot, and we are making quick cash. Okay, there's no sustainability there. You're constantly hunting for deals. So that's that. We are making quick cash doing our RAOA. So how are we going to get sustainable monthly profits? Let's look at wholesale. Now, wholesale is completely different, like I've touched on here. We're buying stock from distributors, from wholesalers, from manufacturers. We're developing relationships with them. We are buying stock in higher volumes. We are buying stock from specific companies higher up in the supply chain. We are utilizing all these things to acquire stock at a very cheap price. I shouldn't say very cheap price point, but we are utilizing all these things to acquire stock at a low price point, okay, at trade pricing. Okay, now how are we going to leverage that? We are leveraging the trade pricing which we are getting by selling on Amazon and taking the difference in between, the margin in between, as our profit, right? So with RAOA, the margin that we get is off the sale that we get from the RRP. So we're utilizing sales and clearance offers and discounts. We're utilizing that margin to make profit. With wholesale, the margin that we are utilizing is based upon the relationship we develop with the supplier, the type of supplier we're buying from, the volume that we take from the supplier, and that's what builds up our margin. Okay, so let's go through these points I've made about wholesale. Now the difference between wholesale and RAOA is we are getting in to these ASINs. We are wanting to stock these ASINs with the intention of staying in. What do I mean by that? Is every single listing which we jump on, every single ASIN which we jump on with wholesale, we jump on these ASINs with the goal of replenishing stock. We get in with the intention of getting in and staying in. However, with RAOA, we're just getting in to get out. Oh, we bought 5 units of Olay cream on discount. Let's get in and get out. I'll never sell that stock again. Oh, we found an electric shaver on clearance. Let's get in and get out. With wholesale, it's the opposite. We are getting in with the intention of staying in. Why is that? Because the wholesale business is all about replens. We want to get in and stay in with our profitable stock, and we want to replenish our profitable stock every single month. We want to replenish our best ASINs every single month. Now that is something you cannot do with RAOA. Okay, so whereby we can keep our profitable stock in stock every single month. That makes our wholesale business more scalable, more stable, our stock more predictable, and also our business more sustainable. And it also allows us to have more security because we can then forecast our revenues and forecast our profits, because we can say, look, supplier X makes us 2K per month in profit. Now, something you've got to understand with wholesale, now while all this sounds great, there is a certain amount of work which you have to do to build foundations. Your foundations must first be built to reap the rewards that I've just said, essentially. Okay? You need to understand you must build foundations. And obviously, these foundations require time, knowledge, and hard work, right? So once you've built these foundations, the business then becomes scalable, okay? Now what do I mean by that? Now once you've built the foundations, once you've put systems and processes in place, okay, your business becomes scalable. You can then focus on the higher ROI tasks. Okay, for example, you can then focus on what's a high ROI task when you're doing wholesale? Developing and nurturing relationships with your suppliers. Okay, that's one thing you can focus on to scale the business. You can also streamline your systems and processes within the wholesale business. You can also double down on your long-term supplier relationships, and also you can double down on your wholesale portfolio. Okay, which is you can start to work on and grow your portfolio of profitable products. Now, all of these things are very, very important to do once you've built the foundations. Obviously, because you can't go and try and streamline systems and processes if you haven't built your foundations first. Okay, if you haven't got that base of suppliers to work with, if you haven't got a base of profitable suppliers, you can't go and then try and streamline systems and processes, because you have no systems and processes to put in place with the right source of suppliers, for example. So all of these advantages of scaling a profitable wholesale business are things which become very, very, very difficult when you do an OARA, because it's very difficult to build foundations here with OARA with stock which is never going to be stable, which is going to be quite unpredictable. Now, you've got to understand with wholesale, we are spending time on building foundations, building a long-term business. We are spending time on scaling rather than scanning clearance offers at retailers. So hopefully that should give you or show you the difference. RAOA, we are spending time finding discounts, finding sales. With wholesale, we are spending time building foundations and scaling a real long-term sustainable business. That is what our time is spent on. Okay, so wholesale, we are spending time on building a business. RA08, we are spending time trying to make quick cash, scanning clearance deals and scanning different sorts of offers on the internet. You've got to remember as well, wholesale, we are spending time for long-term growth. With RA08, we're spending time for short-term gain, essentially. Now with wholesale, what we aim for is steady, profitable inventory, whereby we've utilized these relationships we have with different companies. We've utilized their positions within the supply chain to be able to achieve steady, profitable inventory. So now let's go through the positives of wholesale. More predictable stock. Like I've said, due to our relationships with our suppliers, due to the companies which we're buying from, due to the positions within the supply chain of these companies which we're buying from, it enables us to have predictable stock levels, replenishable stock, okay? And it's more stable and scalable because obviously we are able to forecast our revenues, our profits, and also we're able to scale the business. We're able to put systems and processes in place to then go and scale and delegate tasks. For example, with RA08, the example I gave you was you can't really get people to go out to Tesco to scan stock for you. With wholesale, you can go and delegate. You can get people to do outreach for suppliers. You can get people to go and analyze your price lists, right? There's less saturation and price wars. Now I've got a star there. There's only less saturation and price wars if you run the business correctly. Now what I mean by that is if you go onto Google, type in health and beauty wholesale UK, that's not going to work. There is most definitely not going to be less saturation and less price wars there. There'll be a lot of saturation and price wars. And you will think wholesale is saturated. But you've got to understand you cannot run the business like that. You've got to have strategies in place to find supplies other people won't find. And now if you run the wholesale business correctly, you will find there's less saturation and less price wars. However, if you run the wholesale business incorrectly, I'd argue the saturation and the price wars would be equal to OA. Now what I mean by that is if you don't know how to actually find suppliers, you can't use Google. If you don't know how to actually open accounts with suppliers, if you don't know how to actually negotiate with suppliers, if you don't know how to actually go through price lists, you're going to think it's saturated and you're going to come across a lot of price wars. However, if you know what you're doing, it's less saturated and there'll be less price wars. Like I've touched on already, another positive of wholesale is you're investing time for long-term growth. Okay, it might take you a couple of months to develop a couple of good relationships with accounts, but those accounts could make you 2-3K a month for the foreseeable future. Okay, whereas OAR is let's invest time and let's try and make profits quickly from this stock. Brand deal opportunities. Obviously with wholesale, you're going to come across different brands and then have opportunities to work with these brands to again make consistent profits. Okay, because when you work with brands, and let's say you've got an exclusivity deal with a brand, you're able to pretty accurately forecast the profits and revenues you're going to be making. Now, what are the negatives of wholesale? Higher barrier to entry and high capital. So with OA, you can start with 50 quid, 100 quid, whatever you want, right? With wholesale, I recommend you start with at least £1,000, okay? Because it's wholesale, we want to be buying stock in a bit more volume. The more we have, the better, because we're able to have access to higher barrier to entry suppliers. We are able to utilize softwares and outsource certain tasks. We're able to utilize VAs and delegate tasks, right? So the higher capital you have, the better. And also you're able to gain access to higher barrier to entry suppliers, which will obviously mean more longevity in your listings. So I recommend at least £1,000, but the more you have, the better, right? Because the quicker you can scale, the more you have, you're able to spend more money with your suppliers, which will help you get pricing lower and help you in negotiation. Because at the end of the day, money talks. Like I said again, high barrier to entry, you will have to have a proper company setup, website, email signature, a proper business ethos, a proper approach. You need to get on the phone with these companies. You've got to meet reps in person. You've got to have phone calls with reps. You've got to negotiate with reps. So the barrier to entry to run the business is much higher than just walking to Tesco and scanning a bit of stock. Okay, more advanced strategies and skills required. Like I just said, going through price lists, negotiation, utilizing advanced softwares, understanding data, understanding calculated risks, being able to think critically, being able to negotiate in specific ways. There's so much advanced side of wholesale. It's unreal. Okay, because you got to think of it this way: with RAOA, we're getting out. With wholesale, we're getting in with the intention of staying in. So every single aspect of the business, we need to be doing it to a completely different level to mitigate risk. Okay, because we're going to be spending more money. We're going to be taking more. I shouldn't say taking more risk, but we're going to be spending more money, let's say on wholesale stock, right? So we've got to make sure our data analysis is literally high level, just so we're not losing money. So let's think about that. With all that said, yeah, what do you want? Do you want RAOA, hunting clearance aisles, which is very side hustle mentality? A lot of people might want that. A lot of people might want to go into Tesco. Oh, we made a quick bit of cash here. I paid for my shop. Okay, I made 100 quid my Tesco trip, and my shopping's cost 100 quid for the week. Great, I've made 100 quid. Or do you want to invest the time initially? Do you want to build the foundations, build long-term supplier relationships, which you can leverage over the long term? And do you want a long-term business whereby you are making consistent profits every single month once you've scaled the business, okay? Whereby in a year's time, you're making $2,000 a month just because of the relationships you've developed over the last year. Whereby you're not driving around going to Tesco, hunting for deals, hunting for clearance offers, hunting for sales. You've literally developed really good relationships with suppliers, with brands, with distributors that you can leverage, which can literally put money in your pocket every single month. So something I want to add is, let me go back to this point first actually. Quick cash versus sustainable monthly profits. That's what it boils down to. Okay? Something I want to add, just to finish off on, is most do RAOA to learn the basics, to learn how to send stock into Amazon, to learn how to package and prep shipments, to learn the Amazon game, to understand how to send inventory in, understand how Seller Central works. That's why most do RAOA to start, to understand the basics. And then they go into wholesale once they understand the basics, and then they want to build a real business. Okay? So I see it as literally RAOA, you're dipping your feet in the water, and wholesale, you're like, okay, I like Amazon, I've seen the proof of concept, I've seen stock get sales, let's actually now go and commit. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a good rundown of what the difference between wholesale and RAOA was. So hopefully now you have an answer as to what is right for you. But yeah, hopefully that gave quite a good rundown on the differences. And hopefully, yeah, you can literally, what I'd do is have a think about what I've just said and think about what you actually want out of your Amazon business, right? And it's different for everyone, because I know a lot of people who love the RAOA and I know a lot of people who love wholesale. It's literally just down to your personal preference. But for me, wholesale just makes a lot of sense, literally, because I enjoy it. Working with people, because you work with people at the end of the day, sales reps, working with people to offer value to companies, and they'll offer you value back in return. And then obviously utilizing those relationships to make profits every single month for the long term. It's a no-brainer. But yeah, so if anyone wants any help with the wholesale side of things, you can click the link in the description and book a free call to see how we can work together and scale your wholesale business. But other than that, I hope you found this video useful, and keep an eye out on the channel because there'll be a lot more useful videos coming.